Hey guys! So for those of you who don't know me, my name's Ashley, and this is my presentation on visual and hearing impairments. So the chapter starts out with some student stories, and I just wanted to share one of them. So one of them was Brooke, and it just talks about like their experience with their hearing or vision disabilities. So Brooke was a high school senior, and she had a hearing disability. And so she had hearing loss in both ears, and she'd worn a hearing aid for like forever. So yeah, she attended like a high school in a rural area, sorry. And she did have a full-time interpreter, which included like sign language and everything. So, yeah, she had several close friends who learned sign language for her, which is super fun. But yeah, so it's just and she had plans to attend college next year, is how the story ends. So that just kind of shows that these students can succeed, and it's really important to make sure that we as educators help them succeed. So, I just want to go over the objectives from the chapter. So, the first one, identify students with potential visual and hearing impairments, to outline the procedure for assessing students with potential sensory impairments, to describe the special services available for students with visual and hearing impairments both in and out of the general education classroom, to modify the general education classroom to fit the specific needs of students with sensory impairments, and to arrange the classroom to accommodate students with diverse visual and hearing impairments, and then just to adapt the instruction and provide assistive technology, which we'll talk about all of those later in the presentation. So there's a couple different indicators of visual and hearing impairments, or just like types of visual and hearing impairments. So there's congentile, which is a visual or hearing impairment that's present at birth. So the student's born with it and they have it their whole life. And then there's adventitis, which is a visual or hearing impairment that's caused as a result of an illness or an accident. So yeah, this is super important because students who acquire impairments after they've experienced normal vision or hearing are usually affected less adversely than those who are present at birth because they've had the opportunity to hear at some point in their life or to see. So it's not like you have to totally describe the world around them because they already kind of have that background knowledge. So there's certain signs to watch for that a child might be experiencing vision problems. So there's behavior, and a couple examples of behavior would just be if they rub their eyes excessively, if they cover one eye a lot, or like squint or shut one eye a lot, if they have trouble reading, if they hold objects close up to their eyes, if they are unable to see distant things clearly, and if they have difficulty copying things, like from a blackboard or from like a smartboard in the classroom. And then there's just appearance that can show that they might be having a vision problem. So if they have crossed eyes, if their eyes are inflamed or watery, or if they have uncontrolled movements of dropping eyelids, these can all be signs just in their actual physical face that they might be experiencing vision problems. And then there's complaints. So if a child is complaining that they can't see well, that's obviously a vision problem. If they have dizziness, headaches, nausea, like after they do close-up work, like after they do worksheets or are looking like on a screen reading or something, that can be a sign of a vision problem. If their eyes like itch, burn, or like feel scratchy and they're complaining about that, that could be a sign of a vision problem. So it's super important to watch for these signs when you're trying to diagnose the issues. So there's a couple different type of visual impairments. So a lot of people just think of blindness right away, but there's also partially sighted. So I'm going to talk about some of the differences between the two. So blindness is kids whose vision is 200/20 or less in the better eye with the best possible correction. So 220 means that the individual can see at 20 feet what a person with normal vision can see at 200 feet. So they just can't see as far. But yeah, so that would be blindness. And then partially sighted is kids whose vision is between 20/70 and 220. So that's that's the same thing, except they can see better than blindness. So another qualification to be blind is kids whose field of vision is restricted to an arc of 20 degrees or less at its widest point. And then partially sighted, there's more kids who are partially sighted than blind. And so yeah, it's just a bigger segment of kids. And then it's just also important to note that legally blind is not the same as educationally blind. So yeah, just you shouldn't make assumptions based on if a child has vision impairments because there's a whole big scale, and it's important to get to know every single child and how you can help each one of them. So oh sorry, there's also a different couple types of hearing impairments. So students who are deaf make up about 10% of those with hearing impairments. So again, the category that's not as severe is a higher percentage of kids with hearing problems, which hard of hearing makes up about 90% of that. So, kids who have significant hearing loss in one or both of their ears that require some special adaptations are hard of hearing. And they can often understand speech through hearing aids, and there's a couple other technological devices that I'm going to talk about later in the presentation. And then deaf kids are not able to use their hearing to understand speech, not even with a hearing aid. So these are just people who cannot hear at all. So we have to go to completely different measures to teach them and make sure that they feel accommodated for and have the ability to learn and go on to college like Brooke did at the beginning of the story I told at the beginning of the presentation. So one type of hearing loss is called conductive hearing loss. So this is caused by an interference with the transmission of sound from the outer ear to the inner ear, and this can occur in outer or middle ear. It can be in either, and then it's usually can be treated by medication or surgery. And then there's a type of hearing loss called sensory neural hearing loss, and this is an impairment in the inner ear to the auditory nerve, and it's usually treated with hearing aids. And then there's also something called a unilateral hearing loss. So this is a mixed hearing loss that involves both cognitive and sensory neural impairments. So they don't really have any known organic origin, and it can be due to emotional factors, but it's generally not improved by sound amplification. So or sorry, that's not unilateral hearing loss. That's just the sensory neural, and the conductive hearing loss is what does not have a known factor. The unilateral hearing loss is a type of hearing loss that is only in one ear. Sorry, I made that confusing, but yeah, so unilateral is in one ear, and then the sensory neural and the conductive are in both ears, and those are the ones that they don't have any known organic cause. So it was thought for a long time that unilateral hearing loss wasn't as big of a deal since it was only one ear that wasn't working right for students, and so it wasn't like treated as much. But now educators and scientists are starting to run tests and to realize that this does affect the students a lot. Even though they can still hear out of one ear, it is still they can't hear as well as everyone else, and it is still an issue. So this is now being taken more seriously, and there's being treated more like hard of hearing. Okay, so there's lots of different assessment tools. So there's 3 really big words on the top of the screen right now, and so I just want to tell you about them. So the first one, I'm not even going to try to say that. But the first one, so that's medical doctors who can diagnose and treat eye defects and diseases. So these are just some people that you would end up going to. So first, a student is referred to a referral team, and then like a special assessment team if they need more tests run, and an assessment plan is then presented from the special assessment team and given to the parents. So so normally the assessments are conducted by specially trained individuals, which is what those 3 people on the top of your screen are. So the first one, again, is just a medical doctor who could diagnose and treat eye defects and diseases. And then the second one, there are medical doctors who can diagnose and treat hearing implants. And then the third one, that's doctors who specialize in the diagnosement of ear treatment and ear diseases and disorders. So that's who they are. And then one way to diagnose visual impairment, is you see the chart on the right hand side of the screen, and I'm sure it looks familiar to a lot of us who have glasses or contacts or who have been to an eye doctor. So that's called a Snellen chart, and that's used for visual screening of students. So it can identify possible vision problems. And then an audio meter. So I'm sure a lot of us have done that too. Like, I know at least at my school they would bring that in every year or every couple years, and you would go in and students just listen for like a beep, and it's at different frequencies and different intensity levels, and they have to, like, a beep or just, like, words like speech. And so that can just identify, like, how good a student can hear. So, yeah. And observation from teacher is also hugely important. Like, if a teacher notices that a student's struggling to hear or struggling to, read the board or something, it's super important that a teacher can then recommend them and can start that process of referrals to get them the help that they need. So there's a lot of different modifications that we can help students with. So, so Helen Keller was talked about in the book, and just as one of the first people to really advocate for herself that she wanted to be in the general education classroom, and she wanted to be learning with the rest of the students, and she didn't want a whole new curriculum, she just wanted some adaptations, some modifications, and some accommodations that could just help her get through. So that was just kind of like an inspirational story I thought I'd throw in there. But yeah, so there's hearing and vision disabilities are different than a lot of the other ones that we talked about, because it's not something that you need to necessarily change the curriculum like completely of what they're learning. You just need to change it so how they're learning. But one example of a modification to give students is providing them with audio recorded materials when their peers like are reading books. A lot of times it can be really difficult for them to, especially with vision problems, to read. So just providing them with audio recorded materials is a good idea. And then there's more accommodations that I found than modifications for hearing and vision. But some accommodations are communicating in sign language, which obviously if there's an interpreter present, or even just like learning the basic sign language for students in your class, I think that's super important. Transcribing portions of a test for a student into Braille, or providing Braille books and worksheets. So in the corner you can see I put like a worksheet that I can write my name in Braille. So that's something that you could give maybe to the whole class just to get them a little bit familiar with the Braille, and so the other kid doesn't seem like as weird to them. But that's also a way to help the kid with vision problems, learn. So that's a good accommodation. Or allowing them extra time to finish on tests, because if it takes them longer to read, or reading the test out loud. But yeah, that's super important. Or using caption films for kids who are hard of hearing or deaf is also just really important, because obviously they can't hear it as well. So caption films are super important. So technology, there's a lot of different technology that can help students. So I'm pretty much just going to focus on the hearing impairments here instead of the vision impairments for the technology. So there's lots of devices that can amplify sounds for hearing impaired students and can help them focus in noisy settings. So the first one is hearing aids, and that's the picture that's on the screen. And I think that's probably the one that most of you guys are the most familiar with out of these three on the screen. So hearing aids, it works, a sound is picked up by a microphone, amplified and delivered to a receiver in the back of the ear. So it's important that students with hearing aids are placed closer to the teacher so that they don't have a lot of little noises in between them and the teacher or whoever's speaking, because with hearing aids, it can be hard to focus on one noise. So yeah, it's also important that students directly face the students with hearing aids, so again, to eliminate all the other little noises and distractions. So there's also something called FM technology, and this has 3 major advantages over hearing aids. So the teacher's voice is amplified 12 to 15 decibels above the classroom noise in FM technology. The teacher's voice is transmitted at an even intensity across a distance of up to 100 feet. So this kind of eliminates the student needing to be right up front. And then the teacher's voice is also not directly affected by direction. So that kind of eliminates the students. Sorry, I'm going to run out of time, but I'll just finish this up quick. The students not affected by direction. So there's also something called cochlear implants. So this is a part of a device that's surgically implanted to a child's ear to bypass the sensory organ and to stimulate the auditory nerve direct to the other part of the device that's linked to the student's outer ear. So, okay, I'm just going to stop right here at technology. I have a couple more slides, so I'm just going to start another one because of the 15-minute time limit on here. But, yeah, so I'll be right back.